Are you still
Yeah,
there?
we're here. We're here. We're good.
All
Sorry
right.
about that. Yeah, go ahead. So I did hear about this story, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
I don't know the details more than that.
Oh, okay.
So, but he claimed, the 17-year-old boy claimed to be a part of a militia, but
Yes.
I don't know what militia he was a part of.
Obviously, some unorganized militia, right? So I'd assume that there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of these unorganized militias. I mean, anybody could say, that
Mm-hmm.
they're protecting their rights or they're protecting their community. Because like as far as like I tried to read into militias from the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, and it seemed that the intent there was a militia wasn't like maybe it could be moved on a national level as a national force, but the intention was originally that militias were meant to be like localized,
Mm-hmm.
forces that just protect the local communities. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but now with this kind of like conflict period that we're in, I mean, the fact that a 17-year-old felt empowered to do what he did last night, probably citing the Constitution as his basis of why he did it, um, is if we broke into a civil war, could our leadership activate a militia, or is that
Well, I
what?
think they did in a way in Portland when they sent in the federal troops when the state didn't actually want them
Yeah.
and the city didn't actually want them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me was a violation of Federalist versus Anti-Federalist.
Mm-hmm. And how would that go about? Like, would the state of Oregon have to, sue the, current administration, or what? Like, would that be like the Supreme Court would need to directly try that, or like how would that process work of finding?
I think several of the states have sued the current administration for a variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those lawsuits are pending at the moment. And so, with the current Attorney General, William Barr, being at the beck and call of the current president, there's really not a lot of checks and balances taking place on those issues. So, some of those lawsuits, even though they are in place now, depending on how the election turns out in November, will depend on what the next steps are with those lawsuits,
Yeah.
on whether they go forward or whether they get thrown out.
Yeah. Um, well, okay, so that makes sense. But that was so. Which militia was sent? Was that National Guard, or like from what I read, it was kind of like unmarked troops. But
Right. So I actually don't know.
yeah, that's pretty incredible. It's pretty
Yes.
incredible that we are in this like we're on a daily. There are violations of our constitution, and I would think that people would be upset about this, or more upset.
Well, I think your initial point that you brought up at the beginning of this meeting today was well said, that people need to be more educated and know that they need to be more involved because it is we the people. And that includes everybody. And so many people don't understand why the right to vote is so important and crucial. And for instance, in Nevada, there have been ties. That's how close the votes are when not enough people come out to vote.
Mhm.
And so those ties have been broken with a deck of cards of whoever pulls the highest card wins the election.
Yeah.
Um, but that tells you why the vote is so important. And so many other pieces. A lot of people don't know that they can write letters to the editor, that they can write to their legislators,
Mm-hmm.
that they can put forth their arguments and their complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody really needs to know that.
Yeah.
That's what we tell the students and their teachers because a lot of the teachers did not major in history or government. So that's why we tried to provide as much content as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty empowering. We did as part of my streaming activities, I worked with a friend who's really involved as a community organizer, and we put on the Festival of Progress, and we had several different speakers, including a speaker. The one that was the most fascinating was from the Nevada Coalition to Eliminate the Death Penalty. It was, oh my gosh, that just totally blew my mind, his presentation. But we had an organizer, an environmental organizer, you know, and her call to action was like, here are scripts, here are, you know, templates you can use to write to your representatives about supporting these certain initiatives. And I told them, I said, hey, let's do a call, like live, like doing it right now. I picked up the phone and did the call. And it was really empowering for the audience to see how simple of a process that was. A lot of times that process seems so distant and far off. And it's like, no, just take 30 seconds to leave a voicemail. More than likely, you're going to be leaving a voicemail. So you don't even have to talk to anybody. And, you know, just let your opinion be heard. Now, how that representative is going to process that opinion is really unknown too. You know, and I think
they keep track of the phone calls, and they have to keep a tally of what the issue is and what the argument or the vote was. So they really do take those seriously. And that's true if you email them or write them a personalized letter. They keep track of all of that. That's what their staff is for.
Yeah.
And in Nevada, our state legislature, it's very easy to communicate with our assembly people and our senators. That you can do what you just said. You can lift up the phone and call them, and they might very well be the ones who answer the phone.
Yeah. Who holds them accountable for this tally? Or is that just a personal responsibility?
Who holds them accountable? I'm not sure I know what you mean. Their staff keeps the tally, and then the senator or the congressman sees that tally. And so then they theoretically vote the way the majority of their constituents are asking them to vote. So the people actually hold them accountable. So if you see that your legislator is not voting the way you want them to, or that they're not as involved in the issue that you think is important, then you can vote them out. So that's where your vote is so important and so crucial.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot to trust that, you know, that office is going.
But that's why we the people have to be conscientious and follow through with those things and stay aware of how our legislators are voting on things.
Yeah.
And you can even decide to move to states that fit more with your political beliefs.
Yeah, it's I heard about a cool thing happening in Nevada right now of re-enfranchising ex-felons or even current felons to vote.
That's been true for quite some time. So right now, the most recent bill that passed, it's automatic.
Yes.
But there was a bill that passed about 10 years ago where the felon had to actually do the paperwork to ask for his or her voting rights to be restored. But the current bill that just passed, the most recent legislature, it's automatic that their voting rights are restored.
Yeah, so that's incredible. So yeah, that makes a difference, you know, because a lot of times they probably didn't even know that. People probably didn't even know.
Right.
And now they still don't know. So they
that's left over from Jim Crow. Because a lot of people in prison are already disenfranchised because they might not have received the education, or they may not have received the benefits or the values or the things that they needed to have a productive life. And so then by putting them in prison and taking away their voting rights, you're disenfranchising them even more. So I really think nationwide, they should not take voting rights away from anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm surprised that like no one's talking about this because that's actually a pretty large.
They are talking about it. If you saw what happened in Florida, the people of Florida actually voted to restore voting rights, and the governor vetoed it. So there's a lot of talk about it nationwide.
So there's talk about it among the public, but
Yes.
then what about the politicians? I mean, what about the political parties? I mean, that could be huge pools of voters that they could be connecting with.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And so in Nevada, they don't really have to talk about it because we've actually done what the people asked for. But in Florida, then the people in Florida voted out that governor.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a new governor. So they need to bring it up again so that it can pass this next time. And they have a governor in place that isn't going to veto it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everybody needs to be very conscious about who they're voting for and what the people stand for that people are voting into office.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they are not agreeable with your issues, then don't vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also important to understand that that's why voting is so important.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a conflict, you know? So, like, me currently, like, I don't know who I'm voting for in the presidential election, you know? Like, neither of the two, and I think this is a very common feeling in the community right now, is, like, neither of the two are pulling inspiration from me. Now, my friend that's running, I'm extremely inspired by the work that he does and the ethos that he has. Whether or not I feel like he's capable and experienced enough, you know, to play in that game. And that's what's silly is that it's like you have to be experienced of playing in a game versus being experienced and being a good person or making good decisions or, you know, any of those things. But like, so when I talk to my friends about it, especially my smart friends, you know, like there's this, well, as a voter, we have to play that game. And we know which one that we hate more than the other one. So, you know, just play the game and vote for somebody that's actually going to give you the outcome that's going to be best.
Or do less damage.
Or do less damage, yeah, exactly.
But, you know, if you were a fan of Elizabeth Warren's, or if you were a fan of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have brought a lot of their issues forth so that the current presidential and vice presidential candidates for the Democratic Party, they are now integrating Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's platforms into their own.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at those levels and layers as well.
Of course. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just, it's so strange how, like, you know, even talking about voting, you know, and I'm just trying to tell people just vote in general. Like, I'm not going to advocate for one or another. You know, I think it's interesting to have conversations around the third party, but it's like, you know, anybody that's intelligent tells you, oh, third party is just a waste of your vote. And it's like, it's not a waste of my vote. I mean, the action of me just going to vote in general is like already power in itself.
Well, and you're voting for other things besides the president and the vice presidential candidate. You're voting for judges.
Mm-hmm.
You're voting for assembly people. You're voting for senators.
Mm-hmm.
You're voting for Congress people. And you're voting for ballot initiatives. So you could even leave the presidential one blank if you wanted to, but still vote for all those other pieces.
They're still going to call it a wasted vote.
It's not a wasted vote because you'd be voting for all those other layers.
Of course. So yeah, I don't think it's a wasted vote, and I'd like to advise anybody to not. Yeah, I don't like having that feeling. And it creates even more conflict. It's like I'm not even advocating for one or the other, and there's already a conflict coming in just because I'm wasting my vote. Yeah, there is no wasted vote. A wasted vote is a vote that you don't do.
Right. Exactly.
At all. So, yeah.
There's so many other things that you'll be voting for.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Are there any interesting things on the Nevada ballot that you're excited about?
Actually, I have not seen the ballot initiatives yet. I know that the League of Women Voters have an anti-gerrymandering bill that they've been pushing in the Assembly and the Senate. And I've not seen any ballots for the national election.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
What part?
Gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering is when districts have been drawn to benefit a particular party. So that's why the census is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So when we completed our census in Nevada 10 years ago, Governor Sandoval created a panel, and that panel made sure that all of our districts in Nevada were drawn so there was equality,
Mm-hmm.
so that there wasn't one that was Democrat heavy or one that was Republican heavy, so that they were more balanced around the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happens nationwide with some states don't do that. They're not as conscientious about that. And so the League of Women Voters is against gerrymandering, which means they want more balance in the districts. So it's named after a man whose last name was spelled Gerry, but it was actually pronounced Gary.
Okay.
So, and it was New Hampshire or Vermont, I think, and they said it was the shape of a salamander. So that's how the term came into play, gerrymandering.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that education. Who manages the census?
It's the national government. It's been a requirement since this country began in the 1700s. So every 10 years, the census has to be done. So it's an actual census office of the federal government. And each time there are offices in every city and town in the United States where people, if they have not sent in the census form, then people have to go knocking on doors and collecting the data in person. But this year it's different because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
So probably more phone calls, probably more availability online, and hoping that people actually mailed them in on time. But it's important because it's a way of getting federal funds. And it's also a way of getting either a new congressional district or getting rid of a congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first moved to Nevada in the 80s, there was only one congressional district. And now we have 4.
Mm-hmm. There was 80 and now 4? What was that?
When I moved to Nevada in the 80s,
oh, okay.
there was only one congressional district.
Oh, okay. I see.
Now there are 4 congressional districts.
Cool.
So you have Congressman Amadei in Congressional District 2. You have Congresswoman Titus in Congressional District 1, Congresswoman Lee in District 3, and Congressman Horsford in District 4.
Thank you for that. I just want to clear something up. There's somebody on Twitch, Eddie. This is not the kind of tea party that you're thinking. This is a nonpartisan, literal tea party. Like, we're literally drinking tea, and good tea at that, sourced from artisanal, family-owned, independent farms around the world. So we're trying to give a new name to the tea party. This is not the other kind of tea party that you think we're talking about. Is that still a thing, Kathleen?
The Tea Party kind of folded into the Republican Party.
Okay.
So like Senator Rand Paul is probably a Tea Party person.
I see. I wonder where that name came from. And it's such a disgrace because tea parties are so good. But, you know, it's got to be affiliated with that.
Well, it came from the Boston Tea Party having a revolt. And so it was, 10 years ago, I think, that the Tea Party became active in our politics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party is a really incredible piece of history of not just the tea industry and the tea market that we deal in, but, and lots of other commodities. And, actually tea is the only commodity in the world that doesn't have an import tax in any country in the world other than Germany. Like there's some crooked stuff going on in Germany, but
that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's all because of the Boston Tea Party.
Uh-huh. Well, that's something I didn't know.
So yeah, that's an interesting thing. But now, I'm really into tea. So like, Kathleen, I know we've never drank tea together. It's unfortunate that we've had to have our first meeting like this. But we will drink tea together soon. We'll make that happen soon. But tea is so fascinating. Like personally, I just kind of fell into this career from my past work experience, and I didn't even drink my first cup of tea until I was in my late 20s. So this is this is like a very new thing for me. But I've discovered it to be such an incredible platform for community, for civic engagement, for having these hard conversations, because on a chemical level, the compounds in tea, the caffeine and the L-theanine, they create a mental focus but a body relaxation, which is actually the most ideal state to be in if you are trying to create collaborative capacity within a group of people. It's basically heightening the consciousness of everybody, so you increase empathy, you increase listening and hearing, and vulnerability, which is really big as well. If the U.S. Constitutional Convention ever does get to happen, I do want TLET to be a sponsor and make sure that everybody is getting a proper dose of tea before all these like really important issues get discussed. It could be very powerful, and so that's why I
think that's great. And if you watch any British mysteries, they're always offering a cup of tea to anybody that comes to their door.
Yeah. Well, it's hospitality. That's a big piece of it there. It's such an easy way to offer yourself to your guest and to be vulnerable for your guest and show your hospitality. But even outside of the hospitality, there is some, real hard science, and I'm a food scientist, so I can verify that there is some real hard science that drinking tea does increase your capacity for empathy, your capacity for collaboration. So, we just need to get some more tea in the White House and, in the Pentagon and everywhere where all of these big decisions are being made.
Conversations occur. Yes, I agree.
So I'm going to keep doing this because I kind of feel like if I keep doing it, it'll manifest at some point. I did want to address one other comment that came in earlier because I know you have to leave soon, and you're welcome to go, Kathleen, when you need to. But Jonelle, who pretty much I think she's been watching the entire hour, in regards to what we were talking about earlier, she says maybe something to explore is the extent of industrialization in 1918 America versus the extent of industrialization in 2020 America. Also, how does the Constitution fit in, or how is it what we do molded by the Constitution, or how is what we do molded by the Constitution? I don't know if you want to try to address that now, or something just.
I think that would take a full hour. But it's a really good question and a fascinating question, because if you think about the early 1900s, it was about industrialization. So at the end of the 1800s, you wound up with the cotton gin and electric lights and electricity and all kinds of things that just went exponentially. Think about 1903 when the airplane was invented, and then in 1914, airplanes were being used in World War I.
Incredible.
So, and think about just how we've expanded since the 1940s, when a computer took up 3 rooms, and now it's on your smartphone.
Yep.
So to tie that into constitutionally, I think it has more to do with capitalism and how capitalism fits in to the United States from the beginning, from the 1700s, because people moved to the United States from other countries in order to own land, in order to farm their own product and not be in the serf system SERF,
Yeah.
of Britain and Europe and other countries where people were not allowed to own their own land unless they were born into royalty. So I think that's a really good question, and it would be a fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
And I'll ask Dr. Michael Green that one.
Yeah.
Because he probably would have a very long, lengthy answer to it. But I really like that, so thank you for asking it.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this when I was reading that influenza encyclopedia, the city that got hit the hardest with the worst death rate was Pittsburgh. And so I read Pittsburgh's story, and they said the two factors that affected, their poor response to the pandemic was that they closed their schools the last. They were the last city to mandate closing the schools. And also their poor air quality, which was due to the industrialization. That
all
with
the
poor
steel
air,
mills were there.
what's that?
All the steel.
Yeah, exactly. So the air quality was really bad, and so the resilience when becoming infected with the virus was a lot worse than other cities. So I think that has a factor to do with it too. Is that we are working with relatively better quality air. I don't know how China has such low numbers, because China has some very bad quality air in certain places where they had, high infection rates. But again, we can't trust all the data coming out of everywhere. But yeah, that was just my little side note on that. Kathleen, if you need to go, I welcome you.
I have another Zoom meeting coming up. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
it was lovely talking with you.
Mm-hmm.
And does anybody else have any questions before I go?
No, there's no more questions that have come in. Oh, you know what? I didn't even get. Can you just last minute summarize all the events coming up? And I'll be sure to let everybody know how they can engage with those.
I will definitely send you the links for the Constitution Day kickoff on September 17th and all the different people that are involved in that. And then our lecture series, which will be the third Thursday of every month coming up, and we'll have different subjects. We'll have field trips to different museums. We'll have discussions on racism in America and women's suffrage. And then December 12th is our district high school invitational. March 13th will be our elementary, middle, and high school showcase. And I will just make sure I send you everything, and then you'll have it to share.
Awesome. Great. And so all those showcases and stuff, those are going to be all available to the public to view?
The lecture series will definitely be available to the public.
Okay.
The showcases, you'll be able to see the recordings afterwards.
Okay, great.
It would be too disruptive for the students and their hearings to have a whole bunch of people watching as they do their thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll definitely send you the link and all the information associated with those.
Awesome.
Well, so thank you very much. It was very nice being a part of this today.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate you so much, and I'll be in touch soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.